Another condominium was evacuated, this time in Clearwater, Florida this week. So the quiet, pleasant life of Sand Key was turned from this into this total scene here with just rescue and fire trucks coming from everywhere, as first responders went door to door to 141 condo units after construction workers discovered cracks in a support column at the bottom of the garage while doing work on the slab. So they called 911, and the city responded in full force, just like Champlain Towers in Miami. Now I have the original engineering milestone inspection report from last August, so basically 9 months ago, and it says in here, in the report, that it found no structural issues. This condominium basically got a good clean bill of health. Okay, so now I'm thinking, HM, how does a building go from a good clean bill of health like this to, within a few months, it ends up in this condition here where the column is cracked, and the building collapse is imminent, and they're bringing in fire engines from all over the county to deal with it. That's what we're going to get to the bottom of here today, literally, because it happened at the bottom of the building. Now here's a drone video captured by Skydrone's John Yankeris. I'll put a link to it in the video description below for you, but you can see just how many police cars were there, and not even all the fire engines are here yet because this was still fairly early. Plenty more fire engines were arriving from all over the place, and this was all very well documented too by JLR Investigate. So he was live on the scene doing a live stream for an hour and a half. I'll put a link to his live stream down below in the video description so that you can see the full-length live stream. Get out of the building, they said, ASAP. Here's more technical rescue team arrived, so we got some heavy hitters here. Now, those of you that remember my series of videos on the Champlain Tower South condo collapse here in Miami in the town of Surfside, back in 2021, you remember that the big problem there was that after the building collapsed, they didn't have any TRT teams mobilized right there and ready to go. They had to wait several hours for any of the technical response teams to arrive. They'll bring shoring poles with them. They have all sorts of saws that'll cut through construction concrete and buildings to get at the victims. And so, this time, the city wasn't playing any games. Clearwater was prepared, and they were going to be ready in case that building went down. The Clearwater Fire Department engineers arrived at the McDonald facility and noticed a crack in the columns. They called out to us for help. We assisted in evaluating the situation and deemed it unsafe. So, we helped evacuate the building. After the evacuation was complete, we cordoned off the area, not allowing anyone back in. Now they're working on how to stabilize the structure and ensure it doesn't collapse. Here you can see the fire department had brought in a lot of these pole shores. Some people call them shoring poles, but they're used to bolster up the structure. And there are the beams that accompany them, which usually go up against the ceiling when they place the poles. They just kept bringing more and more and setting them in place. They came prepared. They didn't want to have another Champlain Towers incident where there were no TRT teams or anything in place. These guys showed up already waiting for a collapse to happen, even though it never did. JLR went around back with his camera and was able to get in front of the garage. There they were starting to hand up shoring poles up that ladder to people on the upper deck. They were going to start shoring up every story of the building, all the way up to the top above this column. The column that cracked is to his right, inside the garage under that overhang. He's passing up the shoring pole to the other workers on the second floor, where they will take them and start shoring up all of the balconies and the roofs above them. Now you can see all of the dirt on the garage floor. That's where they had sliced through the concrete slab and removed it, presumably to make whatever repairs they needed, and put in a new slab. We are at the backside of the building, and I guess these are the maintenance workers or engineers working on this evacuated building. The police are allowing the professionals to do their work. You can see that the construction workers wasted no time putting up these pole shores in the garage, in the area where that busted column is located. Here you can see them working. These are some of the slabs that the construction workers cut from the garage floor before they noticed the cracks in the column. This is the northwest section of the garage where the whole area has been taped off. I'll show you where that is on here. So, when you look here on Google Maps and come right across the top of the building, it's in the northwest section of the garage, right here. These were the covered parking spots, and we were looking straight down this row. It was underneath this overhang, which is actually the beginning of the underground parking garage. Cars can drive right in here. They were digging up the slabs underneath this location. The city of Clearwater released this photo showing all of the shoring poles around the cracked column. You can see the dirt in the background from where they removed the floor slab. Here is a close-up that the news got looking into the garage at the shoring poles added around this column. You can see where they already started adding some of the shoring poles on the lower levels. After that, they began working their way up the building, going up the floors. And again, this has parallels going back to the Champlain Towers condo collapse in Miami on my video 2 years ago. You remember I showed you all of these shoring poles that they had put up into place there because they were worried about that building collapsing. And then back in 2022 in February, you remember I made these videos showing you how they found possible damage in columns in Champlain Towers North back here in Miami. And here you can see they had shoring poles placed everywhere. And you remember I also showed you Champlain Towers East, right next to it, which also had disintegrating columns beginning. And that caused a real urgent need for them to add shoring poles that you can see here. Here's another view of it, and some of them required quite a few poles around them too. And this has to be all done under the auspices of an engineer. And then here's some concrete spalling at the corner of one of the walls in the garage. And there's the telltale sign of concrete spalling. Little chunks just come off all by themselves. So, what's interesting about these here is the Champlain Tower South right here. This is the building that collapsed. It was built in 1981 and collapsed in 2021. This right here is the Champlain Towers North, and it was built in 1982, just a year after the South Tower was built. And then the East Tower here, Champlain Towers East. This was built in 1994, much newer, so it basically sat as a slab like a foundation, empty for like a decade. And so some people were wondering if that maybe helped contribute to some of the problems with their columns. Okay, so let's take a look at this and we'll see what happened at this building here. Now remember, this report is what we call the milestone inspection report. This is a direct result of the Champlain Towers condo collapse in Miami. So a lot of people have been asking me what changes have been made in Florida to either upgrade, the building standards or the laws or anything. So what has happened here since Champlain Towers is this right here. They changed the law last year in 2024 so that any building over 3 stories, and it's over 30 years old, you have to do what's called this right here. It's a milestone inspection, and you have to bring in an engineer, and they just kind of walk around. It's not an all-inclusive deal because they don't do any invasive testing or anything. They walk around and they look for things. Do you have any cracked columns? Do you have any spalling concrete anywhere? How do the patios look? How do the insides look? How does the electric room look? Is everything up to code? That sort of thing. And they make recommendations. So that's all this is. It's a, reasonably easy report to generate. And after that, now Champlain Towers was working on the 40-year recertification when it collapsed. They were already working on the construction of the things that needed to be done, but unfortunately the building gave way because it was built incorrectly and it was designed incorrectly too. So I want to see if those same design failures are here in this condominium here in Clearwater as well. The other part of the law that they changed here too in Florida is that instead of the 40-year recertifications, they bumped it down to 25 years because they want to catch something a lot sooner. So, had they caught a lot of these things even a couple of years sooner at Champlain Towers, and had they acted on it sooner, that building could have been saved. They could have rushed in. They were shoring poles like they did with all of these other buildings here, and they could have saved Champlain Towers and 98 people didn't have to die. So this was a big slap in the face and a big spanking to let all of us know. It put all of us on alert that you cannot get away with not maintaining your buildings. Think of it this way, folks. The minute you are done with your building and you've got your certificate of occupancy, and you open up that condo or that apartment building, and people start moving in, The clock starts ticking. Okay, you have 10 years before you gotta start painting that building again and sealing it up, otherwise water gets in. So the minute you move into that building, the environment starts going, hey dudes, alright, we're up, let's start attacking. And that's what they do. They just start like eating away at it and eating away at it. And eventually it gets into the rebar, and when it does, the rebar starts expanding, and then you start getting concrete cracking and spalling and little chunks fall off. And then you start getting major splits and rifts in the concrete, and then columns start cracking like you see here. So I want to investigate that here at this condo. Now look, this is a patio at one of my old condos, and this was a 14-year-old condo. So you can see it doesn't take too long for water to leach into the concrete and eventually make that rebar expand, causing the spalling. And this is why maintenance is so important. And this is why they changed those laws. So, this is the staircase at the condo. And remember, this was a 14-year-old condominium building. And why was this already cracking here? So, this is what you see all the time. They're looking here at the Karen's engineering report, and these guys are well known across Florida. They've got offices all across the state, including here in Fort Lauderdale too. But they have supposedly done work for this condo here back as far as 2003 and 2004 and 21 through 24. So they're very familiar with the property, and it says here that some extensive restoration project work was done here on the property in the last couple of years. So it looks like they did everything from exterior walls, balconies, guardrail replacement, exterior building sealants, balcony waterproofing membrane. So it looks like they were doing everything right. They completed the building painting and selected garage level repairs. Yeah, so it says all of the exterior walls and the balcony ceilings and everything received a 10-year acrylic paint system application. So it looked like everything was going along fine. Then they show the areas that they checked out throughout the property, and these are all of the files and documents that the engineering company had. Now here's where they're talking about what was found, if anything. So anything that was important and urgent, there was none noted. Unlike at Champlain Towers at their 40-year recertification, their engineer over there, Morbidito, had found some items and told them that they needed to get them replaced fairly soon. Otherwise it will increase exponentially. So anyway, here on this report, here's some items that are important but not urgent. So here it says replace the northwest portion of underbuilding garage slab found to be deteriorated beyond the ability to patch during the 23 to 24 building restoration project. This work is currently planned to be completed in October to November 2024. Well, obviously that didn't happen because they were still working on it this week when the issue was found here with the column. So in their conclusion, it says here their opinion is that the existing conditions at the South Beach 3 Condominium Association Incorporate are very good, and any items noted are due to the age, normal wear and tear of the building, failed repairs, and not a lack of maintenance. And in fact, even when the news interviewed some of the residents there after the evacuation, one of them was saying, yeah, we were impressed with the maintenance. The maintenance was done on time. Everything was done perfectly. They did mention a report of an interview with another person, but I haven't seen anything from the person directly. But supposedly another resident had said he had complained to the association about the construction protocols and the way they were done, and he felt some things were unsafe. So he probably saw something he didn't like with the construction crews. That would be my guess. Our only clue to getting to the bottom of this cracking column are these two photos right here given to us by the Clearwater Fire and Rescue Department. They took these photos when examining the garage. Okay, so taking a look at this first photo, here's the information that we can glean here from this column. The first thing that I noticed, it almost looks like it rotated a bit. Doesn't that look like it to you? And maybe it's an optical illusion, I'm just not sure. I wish they had zoomed back and taken some wider angle shots showing the column with respect to all of the other columns and the whole general area here. But you can see this is where they had cut the concrete back here and all around here and even right up here. And they exposed the dirt, and I don't know how close they got over here or if they nicked it or if they were jackhammering it or what, but so, you know, as an engineer I look for patterns, folks. And one thing I see here that's sort of suspicious here is that you have a cracked column right smack dab in the spot where a construction crew just happened to be working. It didn't happen to any of the other columns in the entire building except for right there. So that alone kind of makes me wonder, could they have inadvertently done something there that we don't know about? Another thing we can glean from this, and I really want all of you who live in apartments and condos to take a look at this, and go and inspect your garage and check your columns and your buildings and make sure there's no cracks all over the place. I have people that send me pictures from time to time and videos showing cracks and leaks in their garages with water running down. And, we don't know if this is a spalling issue, I doubt that it is. And I'll tell you why, when we look at the other picture. But it looks like there's enough aggregate that doesn't seem to be a problem. Of course, they'll want to take a core out of this, a core sample, and have the concrete analyzed to make sure it is the right formulation. Okay, so here is the view from the other side of it. Now what's interesting here is it's very dark, so it's hard to see in there, but so far this rebar looks like it's fairly clean. You can see the rebar all in here. And I don't see any signs of rust that would cause spalling. So, I would say right now, this does not look like a spalling issue. This looks like a load issue, or somebody did something at the bottom and interfered with it. Of course, you can see all of how the concrete was sliced over here. They usually use a concrete diamond cutting saw like this one here that we rented a couple of years ago to use at our church when we were doing some work on the sidewalk there. And they use these to give a nice straight cut. And as you can see, my friend is using the OSHA-approved steel cut shoes there. Yeah, construction workers are funny, man. So, this is likely what they were doing down in the garage at the time that the column was noticed to be cracking. So, could the construction crews have done some sort of unintentional damage when they were pulling these slabs out and cutting them? Who knows? Maybe that bobcat there bumped up against that spindly column. Now the news was reporting that this condo was built in 1975, but the engineering report from Karen says it was built in 1979. So it puts it right smack dab in the same era as the Champlain Towers building here in Miami before it collapsed. So since they were both made the same method here with the concrete slab and the concrete columns, I want to compare what they found that was wrong with the columns in the basement of Champlain Towers and see if that same error, that same condition, exists here in the Clearwater Condo. Now, here they showed a couple of issues with some of the basement columns, and you can see the problem that they have here. Close-up shot of it, it stops right here. I can't even tell how many inches off the floor. But this rebar is supposed to overlap and go under the foundation. And so, this is what they found too, that in a number of cases the overlaps weren't even enough, and in some cases, they weren't tied properly as well. So now they have to go back and build some columns that look like this and test them to see if there's going to be any problems, to see if maybe that led to the building collapsing. A lot of people like to use the shifting sand theory. As you know, Florida's built on a sandbar, blah blah blah, and they think that the buildings are constantly settling and sinking in the sand. But that's just not true. It didn't happen in Champlain Towers. NIST already proved that it was only a 1/4 of an inch deviation across the entire site. But here, and the reason why is because a lot of these buildings, here's your column here, this would be like our broken column, comes down and it usually meets up with a pile cap. It's a massive, usually 6 or 8 foot wide concrete cap that's underground for the most part, so to have it out of the way. And that cap sits on top of the piles, which are pounded deep into the ground, either bedrock or limestone down here in Florida, so it's really not going anywhere. So the question is, was something done wrong here, like maybe in the design or in the construction of the column? Here's a video of an apartment building that was being constructed near my house, and I shot some of this, and you can see these columns that were poured, and then the curved rebars there are where the floors are going to be poured, the slabs. So you can see they have the stirrups wrapped around those rebars there to keep them all kind of tied together. And we don't see that here. They're usually tied together near the bottom, so maybe they're underground. Okay, so when we're talking about the possible failure modes of this column that cracked, here's what we're looking at here. So you have corrosion of the rebar as a possibility. You have foundation settling as a possibility. You have overloading or structural overstress because, remember as I showed you with Champlain Towers, people remodeled their apartments over the years. And this building was designed and built in an era when there was just basically carpeting and formica. People have come along and they've added these waterfall granite countertops, and they've gone into the bathrooms and they've tiled and put marble going all the way up the wall and even on the ceiling, and big expensive heavy glass doors. So all of these things add up. You have poor construction and maybe even defective concrete, and maybe even there could be an error in the original design, and maybe it just lasted this long, just like the Champlain Towers did before it collapsed. Construction interference that's what I'm focusing on right now until we hear anything different from possibly Karen's Engineering is probably going to be looking into this. There won't be a big government investigation or anything that we'll be able to get documents on or anything like that. So, unless they make it public later, we'll probably never find out what caused it to crack. So the last major update we got from NIST on the Champlain Towers condo collapse, I made a big video on it last year showing all of their analysis. And make sure you check that one out right here. And if you haven't seen my other video on the Jetée nightclub collapse down in the Dominican Republic a few weeks ago, make sure you check this one out right over here. That's got incredible details and analysis of that collapse. So, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see all of you on the next